Oh, am I hosting? Am I starting?
Yeah, you
Oh,
got the wheel. I I don't
okay.
want to impede on the mojo you guys have had the last few weeks.
Okay. All right. I guess I'm hosting tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Good afternoon. Good evening. Good morning. Whatever time it is in the world, we appreciate you tuning in. This is Backyard Buckets presented by Backyard Sports. I, of course, am the number one Philly hater. I have a fellow Philly hater in the house. How are we doing, Gary?
We're doing good, man. Doing good. Big game tonight. Non-NBA related. Washington taking on Philly divisional for the lead in the division, and I think if Washington can pull off the win in Philly, might have a bit of a, I don't want to say stranglehold. I don't want to exaggerate too much,
Mm,
but control of the division, having won on the road at Philly. So big one tonight for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a good segue talking about big ones because we're going to start the show off talking about a very large individual who plays basketball in the state of Texas. It goes by the name Victor Wembanyama. Gary, you and I are both Wizards fans, unfortunately. So we had the displeasure of seeing this one firsthand last night. Victor Wembanyama rolls in San Antonio at home against the Wizards, putting up a 50 burger by himself, plus 13 in the box score. Go Buckets. We appreciate you being here. 8 for 16 from downtown for Victor Wembanyama, who coming into the season, or I guess through the first small stretch of the season, had not been shooting great from downtown. And there was a little bit of discourse of should he be shooting as many jumpers? Should he be shooting all these threes? I think he answered probably some of those questions last night. Obviously, he's not going to make 8 of them every single night, but if he continues to shoot at anywhere near a 50% clip, I think his coach will have no issue with him taking those jumpers. Gary, take me to your thoughts of watching this 50-point game last night from Vic, and was it kind of an anomaly because they're playing Washington, or something you can expect going forward?
It's interesting. There's like a few things that go into this, right? Because like you think about it on a per minute basis, it is in history the most efficient 50-point game ever. Uh, I'm gonna put you on the spot real quick. Do you know
Oh,
whose record he broke? It is an active player
okay. Active player, most efficient
on a
50.
per minute basis, most efficient 50-point game.
Is it
Actually,
Devin?
it's like the most efficient scoring game but like for 50-point games especially.
Yeah.
Like there's people that have had like 10 points in 2 minutes or whatever, like get hot, but
Yeah. So two guys jump out to me. I'm going to say it's either Clay Thompson or Devin Booker.
you
That's my
didn't need
guess.
your second guess.
It was Clay.
Nailed it.
Nice.
52 points in 27 minutes was the record. Vic had 50 points in 26 minutes to pass him on a per minute 50-point game basis. Unbelievable performance. You mentioned it, the 8 for 16 from 3. If he's going to shoot 38%, he's going to be an unbelievably dangerous, impossible to stop basketball player. If he's going to shoot 50%, you might as well just chalk up every record in the history of in the history of basketball for him.
Yeah.
Because not only is he giving you that, he's giving you like 30 and 12 3 nights in a row, and like he's on a streak right now that it feels like they're starting to figure out how the offense works. They're kind of past the whole pop health scare thing as well, which we know was a hiccup for them over the last couple of weeks. But Washington like threw everything they could at him, dude. Like Cooley and Sarr were doubling him at times, and he's still just shooting out. Like you can't contest a guy who's like 8'5", right? Like, and he's athletic, and he doesn't necessarily like a lot of times you get those big guys that they'll try to like shoot from like low because they like it's like a rhythm thing for the basket. He doesn't necessarily shoot like Dirk used to way over the top, but how do you fucking contest that jump shot? And he
You
can
don't.
score. He can score at all three levels when he's got it going with the jumper. I
Mhm.
don't know where you stop him. And this was always the thing we thought Giannis could be if he had a jump shot, right? If he ever developed a dangerous mid game and a serviceable three ball, like he could have been like this unicorn that how do you even defend him? Because Vic can beat you posting you up. He can beat you on the open in the open court as well. He's athletic. He's got a handle. He can shoot the three now. Like he's up from 32 to 35% this year. If he continues to improve that, like I said, if he's even a 38% shooter in his career, he's going to have he's just going to smash records. He's going to be unbelievable, and they're going to be a tough out if they start building around him. Man, what a performance last night. Watching a guy that tall and wow, it's crazy to see a guy go 8 for 16 from 3 when he's like one hand in the I-beams in the rafters while shooting. It's wild. It's wild, man. What about you? I mean, you're a fellow Wizards fan, right? Like, crazy to watch this guy. And lost in all of it. Like, Jordan Poole had 46 last night. Like,
Yeah.
goddamn good game last night, but in a losing effort, and the guy on the other side was breaking records.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of the Washington experience, right? It's like there are talented guys on this roster, but the roster is not constructed in a manner to win basketball games.
Yep.
Jordan Poole's a guy that, like, at some point he's a trade piece when we're looking probably the year he's expiring, right? That makes the most sense. Kuzma, another guy you're probably looking to move off of. But you mentioned like Koulibaly and Sarr trying to match up on this guy. And for as good of a defender as Koulibaly is and will become in the NBA, he just doesn't have the size to guard Wembanyama.
And that was Sarr's calling card in the draft as well. Is like he's going to be a really good defender, but when you're 7'6" and that athletic, like holy shit, it's tough, man.
Yeah, I mean he's borderline unguardable. Like,
yeah,
he's only shooting 47% from the field this year, but I have to imagine that number just increases. It's still so early in the season, like the sample size of what we're seeing. And we're going to talk about some team stuff later on in the show, but we have to take everything with a grain of salt because it is so early in the season. We haven't even played 15 games yet of an 82-game season. Although there are some teams that may want to speed up their timeline here, regardless of how early it is in the season. Washington is not one of those teams.
No.
But the 50-point game for Wemby, I feel like, is an outlier. He's not going to be a 50-point scorer like that. That's just not going to happen a ton for him in his career. I don't feel like that's there. I would assume, given the organization that he's with, that will not be something that is needed from him multiple times throughout a season going forward in his career, right? You mentioned building around him for the future. Yep. That's kind of what they do in San Antonio. They did it, obviously, with Tim Duncan, the Tony Parker, and Manu. They were going to do it with Kawhi Leonard, and then he kind of threw a wrench in that plan. And then they were really bad for a while. Although they had talent on their teams in the in-between stages. Like, they had a team with Derek White and DeJounte Murray on it, and both those guys are in different places and have played well. Like,
they moved off those guys and bottomed out at like the most perfectly executed time. Imagine that for a team that lucked into both David Robinson and Tim Duncan. Like they executed once again, right?
Yep. But yeah, Vic is incredible. He's a freak, right? And he's going to do something like this again. Maybe not as efficient as he was, but we will see it from him.
20.
Yeah,
20 years old too. Like, yeah. He's just going to get more efficient with his jump shot, I think. I do believe that I think eventually he becomes like a 37, 38% three-point shooter. And I don't imagine he's going to shoot 47% from the field in his career because he gets easy buckets too easily, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it.
I think if there's one criticism of the 50-point game and what I'm seeing at an alarming rate from him are the three-pointers off the dribble. I don't love that from him. Yep. Yeah, like, and it's not that he's incapable of making them because obviously he is, right? But the game of basketball, at least in the NBA, has become all about efficiency, right? Yeah. And when you're that size, the most efficient shot that you can get is going to be at the rim.
Yeah.
Or if you're shooting a high clip, a catch and shoot three-pointer off of a dribble drive penetration from your guard, right?
Yep.
And Chris Paul is averaging, like, I think he's number 5 in the league. He's averaging almost 9 assists a game.
Yep.
You have one of the greatest assist men of all time on your team. You don't need to be taking above the break
pull up
three. Exactly. Like that's just something. And again, we talked about it. He's 20. That's something he will learn going forward. Pop will coach that out of him, I assume. It's just not peak efficiency on a basketball court, which is, again, what the game has become in today's day and age.
The logo threes are fun too, but I don't want to see him shooting 2 to 4 of those a night, right?
No.
Like, it's cool. He made 2 last night, right?
Mhm.
One from about 3 feet shy of the logo and one from kind of on near close to the logo. I don't want him shooting 2 to 4 of them fucking things a night, though, right?
No.
Like, as you put it, yeah, they were pull up, they were pass, cool, in rhythm. You were hot, you were feeling it, but let's not think you're going to carry that over to. I think they play again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's not think you're going to carry that over to Friday night and just pull up from the logo fucking 4 or 5 more times.
Yeah. That seems like a bad thing for him to do.
Yeah, for sure. It's
Well, we
starting to
mentioned
click though with him and Chris Paul. I will say
yes.
that they look very, very effective in that high pick and roll with Chris Paul really initiating the offense. I'm still waiting to see kind of how that translates to the younger guys because we know Chris Paul is not part of the process, right? If
Mhm.
for lack of a better term, part of the process there in San Antonio. When are we going to start to see a little bit of that kind of handoff transition to, is it Stephon Castle, or maybe the future point guard isn't on the roster, right? But it is clicking right now between those two. But I am curious to kind of see, as you said, nobody knows how to build a dynasty or a franchise better than the guy who's in charge right now. I'm curious to see what that transition looks like, because that's a very effective place to have Vic in the offense. And if you got somebody that can run that with him for the next 5, 7, 8 years, that's going to be a very dangerous combo.
I still wish, going back to the draft for San Antonio, that they had kept Rob Dillingham
Yep.
and not made that trade Minnesota, because
Yep.
like talk about big man, small man, like 1-2 game. Rob Dillingham, I think, is going to be an incredible scorer of the basketball at the NBA level, and pairing him and Vic together with Stephon Castle to cover some of the defensive inefficiencies of Rob.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't happen. I'm living in fantasy land there. That would have been cool, but regardless.
I agree.
So, speaking of somebody so young as Victor Wembanyama, we're going to go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum and talk about the oldest active player in the NBA, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
One LeBron James. Some people may know him as Bronny James' father. Totally understandable. Highest scoring father-son duo ever in NBA history.
I'm glad Bronny was able to put him on the map.
Yeah, nobody had heard of this guy until Bronny played at Southern Cal. Well, LeBron is back in his bag, Gary. 3 triple-doubles in 3 games. 3 wins in a row for the Lakers. They are currently sitting at, I have it right here. They're sitting 7-4, right 60 in the West. Again, early, 11 games in the season. LeBron is going to turn 40 in 46 days. Yeah. Do you feel better about, well, I don't really know how to phrase this question, right? What I'm trying to say is, does it cause you concern that LeBron has had to put on these performances this early in the season and they are still only 7-4?
Yep, absolutely. I was going to say they needed every bit of all 3 of those triple doubles. This is a team that, and I know like score wouldn't dictate necessarily. In I think 2 of those games they did pull away late, but they've needed all of what he can give them, because Anthony Davis has been dealing with a little bit of kind of nagging stuff. He mentioned the injury he sustained last year that he's still dealing with this year, and he's been pushing through it. And I got to give credit to Anthony Davis, because for a long time he earned the reputation that got him the nickname of street clothes. But last year he played, I think it was 65 games. It was in the 60s, I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a big reason why they were able to get into the tournament at the end of the season. And he was expected to be a big reason if they were going to compete this year as well. The baton, I fully expected the baton to kind of be handed off from LeBron to Anthony Davis, but we haven't been able to see that yet to start the year. I think that's more of an indictment on the rest of the roster, though. Anthony Davis has been fine. They are really thin behind them. And we talked a lot about Dalton Connect and kind of how much he was in the catbird seat as a rookie in terms of a situation that he could go in and thrive. It's not necessarily happened yet. Again, early in the season, I think Connect has been fine, but I think they need more from him. I think they need more from Rui. Austin Reeves has been a little bit Jekyll and Hyde this year. I don't like LeBron James getting 3 triple doubles in a row to start the season. I really don't, because it I've seen him wear down the last couple of seasons late in the year where he's had nagging ankles or he's just needed rest or, various things. Father Time is undefeated, and LeBron James has punched Father Time, counter punched as much as anybody ever has, especially with the way he plays the game of basketball. But Father Time is undefeated, and I don't want LeBron putting in 36 minutes of labor this early in the season to get a triple double to help his team squeak out wins, right? That worries me, that troubles me. I don't know if you feel the same. I know he's really defied the logic that we have come to know when it comes to time and what it does to the human body. But we have seen indications the last couple of years where it does seem like some of this is starting to catch up with him, which is crazy to say about a guy who's averaging like 25, 9, and 6, right? Like, it's unbelievable what he's able to do. And for us to be like, he's kind of slowing down, right? Like, imagine that's crazy. But I just don't want to see him having to carry the load like this early in the year.
Yeah, LeBron's sitting at 16th in the league in scoring, 26th in rebounds, and third in the league in assists.
Right.
At just a tick under 9.5 a game.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude.
For sure. And you mentioned it, punching and counter punching Father Time. Like, a lot of that is because, yes, he's extremely disciplined in the way he takes care of his body, but he is also maybe the smartest basketball player we've ever seen come through the league, right? Like, we've watched 3, maybe 4 different iterations of LeBron James, the basketball player.
Yeah.
And he's fully flourished into the point forward, the I am running the offense guy that he is now, while still putting up almost 25 points a game. Like, the way that he's playing is, if we had seen this version of LeBron James, his first iteration through Cleveland, he might have won 2 or 3 championships with that roster, because he understands the game at such a high level at this point that he's able to go out and put on these performances at such a high age and then come back and do it over and over again through the course of an 82 game season. Now, how many games he's going to play, we don't know, but it is like we're watching a master perform his craft, right? Like, we are seeing the best of the best do it at such an old age, right? Because he understands it at such a cerebral level. But I do agree with your sentiment that it gives me concern that he is having to do these things at his advanced age because they have not built the infrastructure around him.
Yep.
Now, Anthony Davis, I think, has been phenomenal going back to last season, but like, we've seen it every year in the playoffs since the bubble. They don't make it past the first round because
Teams tighten up in the playoffs.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. The best teams play in the playoffs. We get it. But I give LeBron a little bit of the blame there because he is such a puppet master pulling the strings behind the scenes, right? And we know the flaws that come with LeBron James being on your roster and trying to control roster movement. And then I also give the blame to the front office for not having the balls to stand up to him and say, hey, we're building a roster. You just play basketball, and we will handle everything else.
So you make a good point. We had a lot of conversation about the Bronny situation this offseason as well. Put yourself in the shoes of Lakers management, right? LeBron James comes to you and says, I want this, I want this, I want this. You're going to do it, right? Now, we can sit here and tell them like that was the wrong move because your infrastructure stinks or whatever, but it was also a conscious decision of like, we want to keep LeBron in LA. And like you said it so perfectly, you know the cost of doing business with that, right? You understand the second and third order effects. We want LeBron, but we know what comes along with that. He's gonna tear a roster apart to get himself another superstar or two. He's gonna go in the media and blame us, but he's still LeBron James, and he's still gonna sell the arena out every single night.
Yeah, certainly. The cost of doing business is how you put it, and that's exactly correct. Like, LeBron's on your roster, you're going to make a ton of money from ticket sales, and you're going to get big-time regular season nationally broadcasted games. You're going to play on Christmas Day, but you also have to come with the understanding that he's going to tweet out the eyeballs emoji right before Christmas,
every year.
Yeah, right before the trade deadline, and it's like, oh my God, is D'Angelo Russell going to be moved? I
Yeah.
don't know. Like that's just what's going to happen.
Yep.
That is
Every
what it
single
is.
year.
And he's going to continue to go out and put up triple doubles because he's LeBron James, and that's what he does. And Father Time has not yet defeated this one.
Yeah, and even more to that point, I sold him short on his rebounds. I thought I had read earlier it was 6, it's 8. So he's I'm giving him credit for 25 because he's 40 years old. He gets the roundup from 0.3. So 25, 9.5 assists and 8 rebounds. That's unbelievable numbers. But yeah, I think we're in lockstep here. I don't want him to have to do that this early in the season. If it came easier than what it looks like on the floor, I could sit here and just applaud it. Like, oh yeah, they've got a real efficient offense, but he's out there laboring, and I don't want that for my 40-year-old superstar. In year 20, I think 22, I believe this is it 22 or 23rd year. I can never do the math fucking properly on.
I think it's 22.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I like just unbelievable what he's doing, but what's that going to feel like in March, April, May?
Yeah, certainly. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, after I got off the show last week and blew the SEC championship game to Florida, real bummer for me. You guys talked about Denver, right? After I got off, was that one of the topics you guys hit on? We could talk about them in like the team portion of this, but similar thoughts to LeBron James when you talk about Denver and Nikola Jokic, because they're in a very similar situation there.
Absolutely,
just sans Father Time.
Yeah, a few years apart.
Yeah. Well, Gary, we're going to talk about rookies now. And I will let you start this off because you brought up the name who true basketball knowers are kind of keying in on at the moment. That being said, go ahead and talk about your boy. Show some love, spread some flowers. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so we talked a lot this past year about like this draft class, right? Like in years past, like the guys who went 1 through 5 probably wouldn't have been lotto picks in certain drafts, right? Unfortunately for them, they're going to be measured against where they were drafted 1 through 5, right? So we talked about like who's going to be the guy that's going to be, is it a second round pick? Is it somebody lower down in the draft who's outside the lottery, that sort of thing, who's going to assert themselves, right? And become that guy that steals maybe the limelight in this draft. And we did talk a lot about Dalton Connect. We talked a bit about Zach Edey. Is it going to be him because he's going to have opportunities to play in Memphis? We thought Connect was going to have opportunities to just be the microwave that he was in college and just score buckets. But we've seen a couple of names emerge over the last few weeks because of necessity. So injuries have forced a couple of rookies into heavy minutes. First, I want to talk about in Memphis, Jalen Wells has been forced into playing a lot of minutes alongside another rookie in Zach Edey. Zach Edey had the shortest odds for Rookie of the Year to start the season, but right now Jalen Wells actually sits with the best odds, according to a couple of sports books, because of the way he's just erupted over the last couple of weeks, because of the Ja Morant injury and because of how short that Memphis roster is. Ryan, how you doing, bud? We're at the rookie portion.
Welcome.
Oh, my favorite part.
Yeah, Ryan's
so Jalen Wells is a name that I don't know how many people would have pointed at that and been like, that guy's going to have a really good year as a rookie, or is he even going to be a good pro, right? There's probably several people that would have been like, he could probably be a roster guy, which is where I would have had him before the season started, not the leading candidate for Rookie of the Year on November 14th, right? So hats off to him for really, I think, kind of stealing the opportunity, seizing the opportunity that he's gotten for minutes. And then I'm gonna talk about your boy. I know we try to find reasons and excuses to bring up players from the wonderful Trinity College, or for those of you that don't remember back when they changed their name, Duke University, that jersey hanging over Bentley's head. Jared McCain has because of injuries and a short rotation there in Philly, has actually done very, very well for himself. I believe he sits 5th right now in terms of like favorite, like the rack and stack of the Kia MVP. Right now, he sits in 5th according to a lot of the talking heads. Had a great season. I don't know if he's going to be able to keep it up. I don't know if Wells is even going to be able to keep it up, because when Maxey and Morant eventually do get back into the lineup regularly, I don't know how much those teams are going to say, well, we got to keep this rookie in the rotation with heavy minutes. But hats off to both of them for not necessarily being names on everybody's lips to start the year, and having an opportunity and really taking charge and seizing it. And that's my rookie rant.
Nice. There were some of us that were talking about Jared McCain going into the draft, but certified ball knowers over here. Ryan, I don't know how prepared you are for this segment coming right in off of your hot commute, but I would love to have your opinion on maybe it's Jalen Wells, a guy that I know that you were very high on coming into the draft, or if there's somebody else kind of off the beaten path. I like Reese Shea, so I can talk about him after you're finished. But please, the floor is yours if there are some rookies you would like to dole out some praises to.
Yeah, sure. I talked about Jalen Wells last week for, I don't know, 45 seconds or something like that.
Yep.
I have to give a lot of credit to Memphis because they took him about where I thought he was going to go. Like, I think that was correct. But to contribute to the level that he's contributing at, the guy played at Sonoma State for 2 years, and then Washington State for a year, and then goes into the draft. Again, like you said, not a name people would think about. I think the six, 7 guys who can shoot like he can are always going to have some utility in the league, especially in the modern NBA. But Memphis really needed it, right? Like, it's just injuries immediately. They were injured last season. They didn't know what they had with their depth, right? They got rid of like David Roddy because he wasn't like playing. Guys like Jake LaRavia were kind of like, is this a guy we can play while we're hurt? It's like, you got to feel really good to get a guy, beginning of the second that's contributing and actually playing. And in an underwhelming rookie class, he looks really good. I think if this was a better rookie class, we probably wouldn't say much about him. But I think contributing on a competitive team, playing at a pretty high level, honestly. And he's not super old either. He's 21. He's not. It's not like, a lot of these guys, like, I've never heard of that guy. It's like, well, yeah, because he was 24. He played like 18 years in college. Like,
he got a COVID year and
yeah,
red shirts. And
he's older than Anthony Edwards.
Yep.
That's usually the guy that does this. Like, he's still relatively young in the grand scheme of things. So I think that's a good pick. Bub Carrington's another guy I really liked. I think I talked about Bub Carrington so much in our pre-draft show. I was like, this is the guy. If he can shoot the three, because he had the mid-range game, but if he can just like step out just a little bit, he's at least a 2-level scorer. I don't know if you ever get to like the going to the rim all the time, but Washington needed to take swings, and I love that pick for him. And he's looked every game I've watched, which we all probably can watch a lot of Washington games. He's looked really good. I think he's even looked better than I expected him to be, and I had him like 10th, I think, in my draft. Obviously, it's very early, but a guy I really liked. I think McCain's looked good. I agree with y'all. Obviously, the outburst was big, but even in the limited minutes, he's looked pretty good, just as like a spot-up shooter who makes good decisions. I think that's been solid for him. Ryan Dunn's a guy I clearly was wrong about. I hated the Ryan Dunn pick, but somehow has learned to shoot over like a 6-week period.
I remember your daughter's notes about Ryan Dunn when you were talking about it.
Yeah. I think the notes were can't shoot. And somehow he is shooting. He's shooting 39.5% from 3. Which is crazy because he was one of the worst guys who shot at all in college at Virginia. It's very weird. Is
that a case of like, and it could just be small sample size, right? That always can be a thing, especially this early in the season. But like, We talked about it with Markelle Fultz coming out of college, where like the Sixers tried to fix his jump shot and completely broke it. Is this the case of like, he got to the pro game and he has an actual, like Kawhi Leonard is probably the number one case over the last like 20 years of a guy that like had an okay shot in college but was a freak athlete, and the Spurs, their shooting guru, like made him a very, very efficient shooter from both mid-range and three-point. Is that kind of what you expect to be the answer for Ryan Dunn, or do you expect a regression? Are you going to double down on your Ryan Dunn hate?
It just doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because every metric you would expect of a guy who looks like he should be able to shoot but isn't, because you see that sometimes. It's like, oh, the guy shoots 78% from the line and the form looks good and like the body is smooth. Maybe there's just like a volume issue, right? Or a slight hitch that you're not seeing, right? Which like they get to the NBA and they often can fix that because everything else looks good, right? Ryan Dunn shot 56% from the line last year. And
23% from 3-point in college. 23%.
Yeah, which matches up with a 56% free throw. Like that's what I would expect. Yep. Honestly, that might be a little high. So this is a very weird. You typically don't see it that fast. Unless it was just so broken, and Virginia's like, we don't have time to fix it.
An immediate fix.
Yeah, like that's there's guys who have become better shooters. You know, Kawhi became like a better shooter, but he was nowhere near that bad. And obviously, he became an all-world scorer. But I'm not saying Ryan Dunn's going to do that, but it's just such an unusual development. I mean, defensively, he's one of the most valuable defenders already in the league. And if he can shoot at all, like that's super valuable. I find that very unusual. You just almost never see that. I don't think anybody watching the tape would be like, yeah, that guy's going to shoot next year. So it's either incredible scouting or just really good luck or a mix of both, where the scouts were like, we can fix him, you know, just like everybody in bad relationships. But yeah, it's weird. I just have two other guys. I'll real quick. I know I'm kind of talking really. I haven't been here for a minute. So Yves Missy has been pretty good. That's a guy I've liked for New Orleans. They really needed him because they have like no centers except for Daniel Tice, who's, you know, that's not. I like Daniel Tice, but he's not taking you to the promised land. Yves Missy he guards the rim. He finishes at the rim. That's really all you want probably from him, right? And he only needs to play a few minutes a game to be worthwhile. And Stephon Castle has looked really good. He's still not like shooting. He's a guy who also, like you worry he's not going to be able to shoot, but does a lot of other things that contribute to winning basketball. He's a really good perimeter defender. He cuts, he passes well. He's already doing all the things you want. And if that's all you get from him, like, you're still pretty happy, I think. Obviously, if he becomes an average, shooter from distance, then, watch out because he's got all the talent everywhere else. He's kind of a good to great at everything but shooting. And that's, San Antonio has a lot of those guys, but it doesn't hurt to add more. One of them will learn how to shoot eventually.
Do you think San Antonio still tries to turn him into a point guard? Because I know that was the prevailing conversation of why they made the trade they made on draft day with Minnesota, but also kind of what the expectation was for him to learn under Chris Paul. Do you still think that that's their plan?
I think his highest ceiling is as a point guard. If everything goes right, I think that's the position you want to play him at. Do I think he's like a 10 assist per game guy? Probably not, but he's probably
need him to be though, right?
Yeah, he's probably 6 or 7 in his peak, which is like with Wemby is probably fine. And you have like an all-world defender on the perimeter and an all-world defender under the basket. So like,
yeah,
if he gets 16 a game and is
right
a top, if he's Jalen Suggs-esque, right? Maybe without the shooting, like that's a great outcome.
You look at maybe the best point guard to ever play for the Spurs. His career high was 7.7 assists.
Yeah.
So like
in that team movement. Yeah.
Right. They're not asking a single guy to be the initiator on offense all the time, the way that like a James Harden is or someone like that.
Yeah. And a guy with his IQ, I expect to contribute no matter what, right? I think he has a high IQ. And I expect him to be a guy who gets better consistently, especially with how young he is. Even if the shooting never develops, because we have no idea. And I know nothing about shooting. to look at a guy and go, that guy's going to shoot, as I've established with my Ryan Dunn comment.
Tough.
I'd like to meet the guy who did bet on Ryan Dunn to be a shooter, though. Like, that's the guy I want to meet, because he has some goodwill with whatever team he works for a while.
Yeah, certainly. I watched a lot of Ryan Dunn in college at UVA, and I did not have him pegged as a scorer. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I didn't have anyone who played for Tony Bennett pegged as a scorer. So
Tony Bennett didn't have anybody who played for Tony Bennett.
Yeah, he does not recruit scorers.
He doesn't. Well, he doesn't recruit anyone anymore.
If the other team doesn't score, you can't lose.
Yeah.
That's been their philosophy until UMBC got hot as a 16 seed.
Yeah, in the modern basketball world, that starts to fall apart very quickly because there are shooters in elementary school that will get hot nowadays. It's true. It's crazy. That's why I don't play pickup.
I think Virginia and Villanova play tonight. I know they play sometime within the next week, and it's crazy. Like, if anyone is a college basketball fan, to think of like true blue blood programs, Villanova and Virginia are probably like on the cusp of that, right? But boy, are they in fucking dire straits right now in terms of programs. It is ugly for those two schools at the moment.
They've got to find the right hire. Both of those schools have got to find the right hire.
Yeah.
Yeah, you lose your Hall of Fame coach. It can be tough. I also think like both of those guys from a vision perspective are some of the best coaches like in modern college basketball. Like, if you say their names, you're like, I know exactly what they're running. And they run it, right? And they recruit guys who run it. Like, they run legitimate programs. It's not like I need every 5-star, which is a legitimate way to recruit too. But Villanova's like, can you shoot? Yes. Can you move? Yes. We'll work on everything else.
Yeah.
You know, like, and Virginia, the exact opposite. Can you not shoot?
Can you defend?
But can you stop the other guy from shooting?
Right.
Yep.
And I respect those guys for that. And it's like, it's hard to recruit after that, right? Because it's like, I doubt the next guy has the same vision. He's like, well, I want to improve, this. We're going to run a 5-out instead of a 4-out, or, like it's hard to recruit effectively after you lose that vision, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, speaking of guys that can shoot and move, Zachary Richichet, I know that we're sort of talking like off the board names, but Gary, you said it earlier in the segment. The first 5 guys will not be the first 5 guys in next year's draft, right? So I'm counting Richichet as like a 10th pick overall, even though he went first. Also, to your point, Gary, kind of thrown into the Flames out of necessity. I understand that he was playing a lot for them early, but now with Trae Young going down, there are, 22 shot attempts per game that they have to backfill. So Richichet currently leads all rookies in shot attempts, points, I think rebounds, and is like 3rd in steals or something. And Ryan, you said in modern era, like a 6'8" guy that can move and shoot is the most valuable position to have on a basketball court. And that's exactly what Richichet is doing. Like, he's a very good shooter. He has a high basketball IQ. It was a little higher than I expected. I've watched him play a number of times, and he seems to be in the right position more often than not, which is tough for a kid who's so young and coming from a totally different country, playing a different style of basketball, coming into the NBA. But he seems to find himself in the correct positions. He plays super hard. He dives for loose balls. He fights for rebounds. And he's learning to excel on the defensive end of the court, which is, that's an added bonus when you have a guy who's as effective of a shooter as you have in Richichet. And I'll be honest, he's exceeding my expectations for what I saw coming into the draft, and then them taking him 1 overall. I did not expect him to be as effective as he is currently. And I think they probably found a really, really good basketball player to fill their roster. Next to, obviously, the star that they have within that program there in Atlanta, Jalen Johnson. For those of you who do not know, he also played a phenomenal college program, which is not at all struggling at the moment, coming off just an absolute stunning performance against Kentucky the other night. We don't have to talk about that, though.
Yeah, so Richichet, Vegas is taking notice as well. And I have to correct something I misspoke on earlier. Jalen Wells is not leading odds to win
Mhm.
Rookie of the Year. Right now, he's number one in the Kia ranking that like the media does. So
Sure.
that I need to correct that because Zach Edey is still number one in odds, but Zachary Risacher is currently second in odds at most books.
Yep. And probably deservedly so, right?
Yes.
I mean, it makes sense that Edie is the betting favorite because he's a name that we know. We saw him win back-to-back Wooden Awards. He went to the Final Four, played in the championship game. Like, I understand why he would be the betting favorite. America knows who Zach Edey is.
Yep.
I think, gun to my head, I'd say Risacher is a better basketball player, certainly in today's NBA. Edey has a foul problem. He learned very quickly in the NBA that the Big Ten referees did not travel with him to the National Basketball Association, and he cannot murder
He'd love to
people
put
in the
them
paint.
a fucking gym bag and bring them with him.
Yeah. Sorry, bud. You're big for nothing.
Yeah, I think that's more of like an opportunity thing than like talent, right? It's like Edie got drafted. Everyone's like, okay, we know what he's going to do. He's going to play 15 to 18 minutes on a good team. He's probably going to contribute on a good team, right? Like for a bad rookie class, from a narrative perspective, that makes sense to bet. Like, and again, yeah, name recognition obviously too. But Risacher, because Hunter is not playing because he's just always hurt. Sadly, I mean,
Yeah.
guy I liked, like he'd probably be great for.
Player just can't be on the floor.
I know Atlanta needed
Tony
him.
Bennett
Like,
guy.
he's the perfect fit with like Trae Young, and he just can't be on the floor. Risacher is him, probably more talented at this point by a significant margin, just because he hasn't like broke his back a bunch of times. Not to like try to hurt his feelings, it's just how it is. Now that we have an established role for Risacher, right? Like, I think you have to feel like the numbers are going to look better for him at the end of the year as long as he's healthy. Playing with Trae Young, even like just the outlets you'll get from him, he's going to get corner threes. And if he shot like he did last year in France, which is why he got drafted, because he shot incredibly well in comparison to the rest of his career in France. If that is real, and he does that all year this year, I mean, that guy would be Rookie of the Year. I mean, just because he has a role and will like do enough, like on the stat sheet, because no one else is going to. You're not getting a 20-point per game guy. You're probably not getting a 15-point per game guy. So you just need a guy. This is like a Michael Carter Williams type situation. Even though I doubt they'll trade him immediately after he wins Rookie of the Year, but it's not the process Sixers. But he's perfect fit there, and he makes a lot of sense as long as Hunter is not playing. Like that role is pretty big for him, and bigger than Edey by a lot. So,
well, there's another rookie who probably would be averaging 15 points a game if he wasn't shooting 34% from the field and taking, like I told Ryan the other day after the Houston game, some of just the worst, like inexplicable contested jumpers I've ever seen on a basketball court. Of course, I'm talking about Alex Sarr, the number 2 overall pick to Washington, currently averaging 9.5 points a game, but like I said, only shooting 34% from the field and taking
from 3, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, not from 3. That would be incredible if he was.
Right.
Yeah, you feel good.
Yeah.
From the field.
Yeah, he's shooting 16% from 3.
Yeah.
So worse than Ryan Dunn in college.
Yeah.
Risacher, or excuse me, Sarr, not Risacher. Risacher would be nice.
They're both French.
Yeah, they're both French. Neither of them played in the Final Four last year. So look, I understand why Washington took him at 2. I get it. He was projected number 1 for a really long time. His ceiling is probably incredible. He just has to learn how to play basketball, Gary, you and I talked about how basketball has become such like an efficiency-based sport in the NBA, right? And Vic taking these off the dribble threes is probably not the case. Like, that's not what you want to do. Sarr taking any type of jump shot is the least efficient outcome for the Washington offense at this point. And it's really just not what you want. Like, he needs to be a lob guy, a clean up the glass guy, and play super hard on the defensive end. And it's ugly watching him play basketball. It truly, truly is. I don't I really would love for him to be phenomenal and for him to grow and develop. And he's still really young. I get that, but like, man, to be taken second overall and just not know how to play offense in the NBA in today's day and age, that's tough. I don't love that, if I'm being
Yeah,
honest.
the European game has infiltrated the NBA so much that like it should have been an easier transition. I think I want to try to let him off the hook a little bit, which isn't typically in my style. So I'm going to do something that's a little bit out of character for me. And I feel like there's a little bit of pressing going on with Alex Sarr. His shot selection is bad. And Washington is not a team that's like, hey, we've got to clean this up because we want to compete this year. Washington is a team that's going to continue to roll the ball out there and just see what these young guys have and see if they can get vets like Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma to increase their trade stock. And I feel like Alex Sarr probably heard all of the conversations, including on this show, that said like Alex Sarr would not be a lottery pick in most drafts. And he was projected number one all the way up until about a month before the draft. Really, most of the talk was that Sarr would be the number one pick. I wouldn't be surprised if like there's some of that that's in his head and he's just trying to show like I belong in the league. He's young. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I'm being optimistic, which is out of character, and maybe I'm wrong for being optimistic about it and trying to let him off the hook. But man, it does feel like sometimes like you watch him and it's a guy that's like in between so often. And as you put it, like he just, it feels like he just doesn't know how to play offense in the NBA. At other times I've seen this from like guys when you play pickup ball who are like fans of the game, but not necessarily like guys who know how to play basketball. And they kind of get stuck between like, do I dribble? Do I pass? Do I shoot? And then they end up like pulling up and shooting a shot that misses the rim by 8 feet. And it's like, shit, I probably shouldn't have done any of those things. I feel like a lot of times watching Sarr, there's a little bit of that in there. And I'm gonna try to be optimistic in terms of like maybe the young guy figures it out and maybe the game starts to slow down a little bit for him and maybe he gets out of his own head a little bit. And hopefully he shoots like 33% from the 3-point line and like 50% from the field. Like that's more like a guy of his build and style of play, like more what he should be doing. He's shooting about half that. We need to get those numbers up a little bit.
Yeah, it's scary hours on the offensive side of the court for Washington.
It is. It is.
Ryan, I know you were a little higher on Sarr than I was for sure coming in. Are you at all deterred by what you've seen so far from Sarr?
No, he looks like what I thought he would look like. I think you said it correctly, Bentley, that and we've said this, we've talked about this before, but it was the correct pick because you just take a ceiling pick in a bad draft. I think it's like there's a chance he's Thon Maker, like legitimately, right? Like that's probably his floor. Just a guy who like seems like he should be worthwhile and he just never becomes worthwhile.
He looks like a basketball player.
Yeah, and does things on the floor where you're like, oh wow, like for a guy his size, that's pretty wild that he can do that, right? There's not very many people who can, but it just doesn't all like come together. And like his creation is there, like that I do like. I see self-creation. The finishing is not there. He can get the shot. As my dad always said, $1 million move, 10-cent finish. He's got a lot of that where it's like, oh, a guy at that size taking a step back like three, like a lot of them can't, right? Even do that at the speed he does it at. He gets to his spots. He just cannot finish when he gets there. And it's like that it's maybe is a touch thing. Like he maybe just doesn't have touch, which is hard to teach. It could just be a repetition thing, and just he needs like an off season or two to just figure out what his go-to moves are, because I think he has the balance. I think he has the quickness at his size, and obviously the defensive acumen, right? Like I don't think he's a good defender right now, but he is a statistically decent defender, right? Gets a lot of blocks just because he is very athletic. I think he figures out positioning. He figures out where he wants to be. He gets a legitimate point guard with him, right? Like, let's be honest, Washington's not the best spot in the world.
No,
It's a good spot to learn how not to do things, which is beneficial. But I think he looks exactly like I expect him to. And if I was Washington, I would go back and take the exact same pick again, even up to this point. I don't see another guy that you're like, oh man, really missed out on. I don't know. He's so young. I mean, he's still super young. There's flashes. It's just the finishing is not there. If he can create and continue to get open looks, the finishing should get better. I mean, just inevitably, he'll get stronger. He'll get more repetition. I'm not super worried yet. I think he's like a 3 or 4 year project probably, which is Washington as a team is at least a 3 or 4 year project probably. So
you're being optimistic.
Yeah, I mean that's like your average rebuild nowadays, right? It's like rebuild until you have to pay the guys you drafted first, and then you're like, okay, what are we doing?
Yeah, which ones are we gonna
Yeah, so he's going to be in that conversation at the end, and he could again be Thon Maker, and it's a terrible pick. But he probably was like the 15th pick in the year before him, so it's like, it's not the likely. Yeah, the great outcome is not likely, but it's not zero. So I think you have to do that. That's just my opinion.
Well, I hope you're right, and we are at some point discussing giving him a max extension because he's deserving of it.
Yeah,
and not Thon Maker 2.0.
If he can become like an 18-10 guy, let's get there.
With the defense, 18-10 and like a solid defender, you'd be super happy. Especially in that draft, he might be the best player in that draft.
Right.
I don't see that coming out of a lot of other guys. So.
Is optimism looking good on me tonight?
Well, I'm gonna give you everything. Go ahead, Ryan. Say it.
I was like, everything looks good on him.
There you go.
I appreciate it.
I'm going to give you each all another opportunity to be optimistic here because we're going to talk about a team who, similar to Alex R, has started off the year very, very poorly. And if you look at our tickers here at below Gary and I, it'll give you a hint as to who we're going to talk about here in a second. That team, of course, is the 2-9 tied for worst record. Well, I guess Toronto has one more loss. But the 2-9 Philadelphia 76ers, we did see the return of former MVP Joel Embiid on Tuesday night. Did not look great, did not look in shape. He looked a bit like Alex Sarr out there with a little more finesse. Gary, let's go your direction first here. We've done this segment before on this show during this exact season. Is it time for them to worry? And I believe my response was, they're a brand new team. Let's write it out and see what we think. Do you agree with my original sentiment, or do you now feel there's more cause for concern?
I think that there's cause for concern because when your superstar player comes out and it is just point blank vocal, like, I'm not playing back-to-backs, I'm too sore after games, bad look. And not to mention like the Maxey injury, that could be something that lingers. Honestly, like worst case could linger all season. Like hammies are never an easy thing to manage and to come back from. We could be talking about Philly at the deadline, like should they trade Joel Embiid, right, and try to find a way to get rid of that contract? And no, I don't think that's a realistic outcome, but like that's how bad it could be at the deadline because this feels like a very dysfunctional team, and it's hard to erase dysfunction in season. Usually it takes an off season where you make a move, you get new coach. Maybe it's as far up as a new GM. Maybe you trade or you move or you bring in another superstar player. I'm on the side of like, this looks bad, and I feel really good about my underpick to start the season. When you're in the conversation with Washington and Toronto on November 14th, like it's getting dark early. And I know we're still only in the middle of November, and we would say that for a lot of teams, but in my eyes, the dysfunction that's surrounding Philly right now tells me that November 14th is probably the time when we need to start taking this seriously.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's similar to Washington and watching SAR. It's very scary to see what's happening with this roster. You mentioned Tyrese Maxey with the hamstring, set to be out multiple weeks and then to be reevaluated, but hammies don't go away easily. They linger. I don't know if we see all three of these guys play together before Christmas. Like, there's a chance that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention PG missing time already. Like, ooh,
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Ryan, what do you think? You were optimistic about Alex Sarr. Do you have any optimism for the Jared McCain-led Philadelphia 76ers?
No, not for the Jared McCain-led 76ers. I don't have optimism. I think he's fine, but no, I wouldn't say that's where you want him to be currently in his career. Maybe a couple of years down the road, but yeah, I mean it's the East, so like I think if you're like the 3 or 4 seed, like you're scared you're going to end up playing Philadelphia. When they're like 100% in the playoffs, right? As long as that
their
team
31 wins as the 6th.
yeah. If
5-6 right now is going to host a fucking playoff series.
If this is the Western Conference, I mean, they're already like considering blowing it up, right? Like you have like a month, and then you got to be like, yeah, this is over.
Yep.
You might have 2 or 3 months in the East. So like. As long as they're healthy in the playoffs and can just like play like 500 ball the rest of the way, right? Which I think is attainable, especially in the Eastern Conference. Because I think they'll get healthy and play above 500 at some point. They'll be below until they're healthy, but they'll probably even out at like 500 probably. They probably get in the playoffs. Even in the play-in, they're terrifying, right? Like you don't want to be the team that has to double eliminate the Philadelphia 76ers at full strength, right? Like, so I'm not worried. Now, if you call me and we do in their 4-16, then maybe it's over, right? Like it's almost you'd have to have an incredible run on the back end to make that worthwhile. But you might get in the playoffs, like Kerry said, 10 games off 500, and you might not even be in the play-in.
Yeah, you might be the 5 seed at 36 and 46. Like,
and then whoever plays the first round is scared, and then whoever plays them second round is like, well, this sucks. Like we're supposed to have like favorable matchups, and now we play a former MVP, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. That team on paper is good. It's just like
they're healthy.
They played 0 games together.
Yep.
So we have no idea. The jury is out until about a month from now, and then I guess we can reevaluate if they haven't played well together. I mean, Max is not going to be back for a while, but if their record looks the same as it does in a month, you might have to blow it up.
Blow it up, says Ryan. Interesting, very interesting. You would come off such an optimistic take about Sarr, but just blow up.
I mean, I feel like I said a lot of other things, but
all I heard was blow it up.
That's all we heard.
I love commitment.
I know it's one of your.
Go for it or blow it up.
Yeah. So, honestly, it's not like that. I tend to agree. Like, if you come back in a month and they're 11 games under 500, why would you not look to move on from probably Joel Embiid and then just focus on Maxey being the focal point with Paul George being the second best guy, and then fill in around those dudes? Because Embiid's contract is crazy. He never plays. And I'm sure that somebody would, I don't know, Toronto would be like, hey, we would love to sell some tickets. Let's get a former MVP in the house and see what we can do with it. Unfortunately, Washington might also be on that list, but
Toronto might be a pretty decent team if they had Joel Embiid. They got some talent on that team.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, they need the superstar, obviously, but like RJ Barrett, quickly and Embiid. That could be a
It's
good
just
team.
like a dissolved solution of talent with nothing to really bring it together. Yeah,
A
mean,
great Grady Dick is carrying that program.
yeah.
Scotty Barnes. I mean, that's.
Him and his,
I mean, they'd have to lose some of those
red
guys to
suit.
make the trade, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think they would go for it, but that would be interesting if you could just put them over there. They'd probably be a playoff team.
Yeah. Well, we're going to repeat a segment here because we've done this one as well. We talk a lot about the Sixers on the show, and we talk about the Warriors on the show, but we're going to talk about the Warriors again. Warriors tied, well, actually sole possession of the second best record in the West. They're currently 9-2. Their only losses coming to the undefeated Cleveland Cavaliers on the road in Cleveland. And then they lost in LA to the Clippers in a game where Steph Curry went out with injury. Aside from that, they have a flawless record, including a 3-point win on Captain Clay night. Klay Thompson's return to the Bay Area. They were handing out really cool boat captain's hats. Ryan, I'm gonna ask you this question first, and then Gary will go your direction afterwards. This actually could have been a splash of trash segment, but we didn't line that up in time because we'd like to do things on the fly around here. Either way, Ryan, actual contenders in the West as currently constituted, yes or no for Golden State?
Are we talking championship contenders?
Just to win the West, to play in the NBA Finals.
No, I don't think so. I think they are overplaying right now. Though their metrics look good, I will say. Everything indicates they've had a pretty average schedule, so it's not like we're seeing expect a huge swing one way or the other. They've kind of evened out, especially playing like Dallas has brought their strength of schedule back up. They look okay, but they're also shooting otherworldly, I think, to some extent. We talked about that before. Buddy Hield, I think he was shooting 50% last time we looked. I think it's down like a small amount since then, but you probably don't do that forever. Health is a concern. They're an older team, right? Like a lot of their stars are older. Draymond's like very gray haired at this point. Steph Curry is obviously old and has already been hurt. I don't expect this team to be winning the conference. I have them as like fourth or fifth best team, which is probably not a conference championship winning team, more than likely.
All right. Gary, same question to you. Actual competitor to win the West?
I think so, because I think, let's go. Commanders by 1,000. Let's fucking go. I'm all in for that. I think competitor, yes. Would I pick them to win the West? No. Is that fair? Like, can I say that? It's kind of hedging, and I'm just gonna hedge. But I also think that they're gonna be players at the deadline, and I think that we could have a very different understanding of what the Warriors are going to be in May in a 7-game playoff series than what they are now. You said it perfectly earlier, Bentley, when you suggested this topic, like too deep, maybe, right? Like too many in the rotation. But as Ryan said, they're playing with incredible efficiency. Pods looks like he's probably going to finally be a staple, and I'm going to eat my words for calling him the odd man out last week or the week before, whatever that week was that we were talking. He looks like he's a staple in the starting lineup. It looks like Kerr's finally got trust in him, which is what it didn't feel like he had last year. Buddy Hield, if he can continue to shoot at this rate, it'd be unbelievable, but also like that's a huge difference maker for them. They're not relying on just Steph to shoot the lights out every single night. Kuminga looks good in the role that they've got him in as kind of that energy guy off the bench. I think it's sustainable in terms of like them hosting a first-round playoff series. And for me, I look at the West, it's like any of probably 4, and I could probably lump in 5 teams that I would look at and say, like, in a playoff series, I think they have a shot, right? I think it's like a 2-horse race in the West. If you put a gun to my head and made me make a choice in terms of like how many teams should be in the conversation to win the West, I could narrow it down to probably 2, and that would be it. But I wouldn't count this Warriors team with the championship medal that they have, with the difference maker Draymond can be in terms of pestering and the way he plays defense and the energy he brings. And Steve Kerr. I think Steve Kerr is one of the great in-game managers that we've seen, and even in series managers that we've seen in the last 15, 20 years, in terms of guys on the bench that can make a difference with when they call a timeout, make a difference with when they rotate guys, make a difference with how he gets Steph the proper rest at the end of quarters versus beginning of halves. I just think that those factors for me make them a contender, but not the team I'm going to pick. I reserve the right to change my judgment if they do go make a move at the deadline and bring in like a real stud. I don't know who that would be. I'm not going to make a determination on who I think that would be, but as deep as this roster is, I think they can be players at the deadline, and I think they're going to be as aggressive as they think they need to be to get one more ring before Steph and Draymond retire.
Yeah, I think that was very well put. I agree that they are someone who is not to be tampered with in the West because of the championship mentality that they have. They have the championship medal, if you will, right, with those two guys, to include Looney, I guess, really, if you want to put him in there also. Wiggins won a title with them. They have a very experienced veterans on this team. I do, the sick humor I find in the sport of basketball is them having the deepest rotation in the NBA after Steve Kerr refused to play Jason Tatum on the Olympic team. Like, I find that personally to be very funny. But we know, and you said it earlier in the show, Gary, it tightens up in the playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't play as many guys. Your best guys play more minutes. I don't know if their best guys are good enough to win the West, right? They're good enough to win a lot of regular season games, and we're seeing it right now that the fifth-rated defense in the NBA, if you keep Draymond healthy for the whole season and he plays, 70 games or whatever, 75 games, they're going to be a really good defensive team all the way through. They either need Kuminga to become an elite offensive player, or they have to supplement some of their rotation guys for a guy who can go out and get his own bucket.
Yep.
Because as good as Wiggins has looked, that's never really been his game, right? He's never been an A1 scorer.
Nope.
And I guess technically you don't really have to because Steph is on the team, but like in the moments where Steph is not Steph, right? And he's going to be, I think, 37 by the end of the season or whatever. But like they need somebody who can supplement the points that they got from Clay when winning their titles, right? Like that's just, I don't know if that person is on this roster. Like I said, if Kuminga makes that step forward as an elite offensive player, then I would feel much more comfortable saying that they're going to win the West. But with the given roster and current rotation that they're playing, I don't think they have the players or the skills necessary to win a Western Conference and play for the NBA championship.
I like the stat you brought up defensively too, because I think that's something that gets lost on their championship run. The first championship run before Kevin Durant is like, yep, Steph and Clay were the Splash Brothers, but they were like a top 3, top 5 defense for those championship runs during that stretch. In fact, I believe one of the championship years they were the number 1 defense in the league. Don't quote me on that because it might be wrong, but I know that they were a top 5 for like that stretch during that first run. And then when you bring in a Kevin Durant, you can just go and say we're gonna outscore everybody. And they were still good defensively. They're still like a top 5, top 10 defense. But that's something that they hung their hat on, and that's something that they're getting this year from what they've constructed in terms of, you mentioned Kuminga, great off the bench. Really, he can be a two-way guy. Not a great offensive player yet. I think that's who they expect to become the next guy. To as Ryan, I believe, was pointing out, like the soft landing, right? I think Kuminga is like the number 1 piece of that. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if at the deadline they go out and get somebody who's a bucket. And I don't know that name yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was 2 guys and maybe a couple of future picks getting moved for a bucket.
Yeah, for sure. Well, gentlemen, I believe we've reached the end of our actual agenda for the evening. We have kind of missed out on a segment that we did last year. We obviously do these pods on Thursday nights. Thursday Night Football is a thing. What better week to bring it back than the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles? So let's go around the room. I will ask if you have any more basketball opinions, any more basketball topics we can hit. And if consensus is no, then we can give out our picks for the evening. So, Ryan, would you like to talk any more NBA before we get to our football pick?
We got a long season, plenty to talk about in the future, and I'll ramble forever if given the opportunity. You want my football pick?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm for my best friend, I'm going to say the Commanders are going to win. Also, my girlfriend hates the Eagles, so I have to say that.
Oh, I like her already. Fuck Philly.
She's a Steelers fan, so there's a little bit of a rivalry there. Plus, I think this is a good week just in general for football. Pretty good matchups across the board.
Division plays really picking up right now, and there's some good out of division matchups this weekend too. It's a pretty solid weekend.
I thought you were talking about South Carolina and Missouri.
That too. College football's got some good matchups this weekend too.
I don't know that sport.
You learned a lot about it yesterday, though. I'll tell you that.
I did. I asked good questions.
Gary, any more NBA topics you'd like to hit?
Nothing major. I just want to give a shout out. I believe my dad's still out there tuning in with us. Apparently, the Cleveland Cavaliers have just decided the 2024-2025 season, they will not put a number in the right-hand column. 13-0 to start the season. It's the best start since we just talked about the Warriors, the 73-9 season that they had and losing in the finals with Kevin Durant. They started the season off 24-0. Right now, the Cavaliers at 13-0 are the second longest we've seen. And of course, you go back to like the Lakers with the 33-game win streak that didn't start the season, but that is the record for the longest win streak. We're not near that territory yet, but just Cavaliers look good. I just want to give that shout out. I will be ecstatic if I'm wrong about this pick. I worry about the game being in Philly. I think that these two teams are going to split home and home. So I'm going to take Philly tonight, but I think Marshawn Lattimore is going to be healthy for that second matchup in DC or in Landover. So I will spoil a pick in about 3 weeks. I think they play again 4 weeks. For anybody who tunes into the Blitz on Tuesday nights, I'll take Washington at home, but I'm going to take Philly at home tonight. I just want to see us continue to compete. I want to see us continue to stick with these good teams. Philly's won 5 in a row. Let's lose by a field goal if we're going to lose. If not, let's win by 1,000. I'll be really happy if I'm wrong. I try not to be super biased when it comes to like my team playing and just say, oh yeah, Commanders are going to win by 1,000,000. But I think tight game, Philly by maybe a field goal on the road. Just want to see Jaden Daniels continue to grow. Just want to see this defense play tough, compete, and go from there. But yeah, Philly at home.
Yeah, I think Philly wins. I would take Washington to cover, though. I think it was 4.5.
I think that's what it was, yeah.
Similar to you, a competitive game, please, for the love of God, make it competitive if we're going to lose. It would not shock me if we won on the road in Philly and then lost to them at home in Washington.
Yeah,
but
get the split the other way.
Yeah, I think Philly wins. They're hot right now.
Yeah.
Washington's defense has been a little bit of like an overachiever so far this season. Yeah. I think Dan Quinn is a good defensive coach. We just don't have the talent to kind of match the high-level scheme that he wants to put in place. Lattimore will certainly help.
Yeah. Need some bodies.
Yeah. So give me Philly tonight by 2.
All right.
Yeah. Well, for the boys in the house here at Becker Buckets, we certainly appreciate everyone coming in and hanging out with us, talking ball, and listening to us ramble on. We will be back. Gary will be here Tuesday. I will be back Wednesday with Gary, and then the three of us will be back here next Thursday talking sports. We got NFL, college football, and NBA all covered for you. Thank you so much. We are out.